Trump's gonna rock this show. Step into life where the real facts flow. Step into
Hi there. Welcome to the Pun Show. Another week, another dollar, which is about what I make. Today I'm going to talk about a few things, but mostly I'm going to focus on this whole bombing the Caribbean thing, and not just about that, about how MAGA thinks. And I use the word thinks very loosely here. Just this one sentence that Donald Trump is, fighting terrorism by bombing these Caribbean boats and stopping drug dealers as a justification for what he's doing. I counted at least 12 different fallacies involved in just that one statement. And so I'm going to go into that later in what I call a fallacy bomb, to where if you start addressing one fallacy, you let the other 11 lies and fallacies just sit there and explode all over you. So it's like this trap that you step into, and they have one simple statement, and it's just like you take half an hour to answer why it's wrong to cover everything. So I'm gonna use the bulk of the show for that. But first, I want to talk about Trump's Epstein gamut. As you know, or probably know, he has pivoted on the vote for releasing the Epstein Files. Last week, they tried to get Lauren Boebert in to convince her to remove her name from the list that would force a vote on releasing the Epstein Files. Well, now today, or last night, Trump has decided to endorse it. So what's happened in between? What's happened in between is that Trump has also ordered the Department of Justice to open investigations into Bill Clinton and other Democrats that are involved in the Epstein Files. Now, or with Epstein or whatever. Is it? I never can figure out if it's supposed to be Epstein or Epstein. Anyway, regardless, the whole thing is a gamut. Because now what Pam Bondi can do is, once Congress orders her to release the files, she can say, I can't. There's an ongoing investigation that's going to be disturbed, and it's against policy to do that. And so, sorry, my wife was circulating outside. So the Epstein Files, got to reset my thought here. So if he releases the Epstein file, if he endorses the vote for the Epstein Files, then the possibility that he can say, when Pam Bondi says we can't, the Department of Justice, can claim executive immunity, right? Like the legislative branch can order it, but the judicial branch can say, no, you can't. And it's eventually going to lose in court that way. That's what Eric Holder was claiming with the whole gun weapons thing that I can't remember the name of. But the eventually he's going to lose, but he can kick it down the road that way. It can take another year. It can take until after the midterms. What he could do, if he really wanted them released, is just order them released. But if he orders them released, Pam Bondi can't hide behind executive privilege. She can only hide behind executive privilege if it's Congress telling her to release it, not if it's the president telling her to release it. Because obviously, if the president is telling her to release it, executive privilege is waived. So this is their gambit now, is they're trying to make it so that they can create the illusion that they're behind releasing it. But, this investigation is going on, which, by the way, was an investigation ordered by Trump. And only into his political opponents, not into himself. I think it was, I want to say 1,264 or something like that were released in the emails of his name that was mentioned in these emails. Which, by the way, let's talk about it. Another thing here. It is DOJ policy to not release the files, not to release things when there's an ongoing investigation, which is why they were never released under Biden. The appeals for Maxwell were still under review, and that didn't get finalized until April. So up until April, it actually was against DOJ policy to release the full Epstein files. But now it's not. Now that case is over. So since April, between April and now, you could. But now Trump is saying, oh, we need to investigate these Democrats. And that's an investigation that is being launched to protect Trump. And I will say 100%, if Bill Clinton raped children, he should go to prison for it. And anybody else that raped children should go to prison for it. I am 100% in favor of sending child rapists to prison. I'm not saying we should cover for Clinton, or that we should hide from that, or that Clinton shouldn't be investigated. But I'm not saying only Clinton should be investigated or only Democrats should be investigated. Clearly, Trump had a relationship with Epstein, and that needs to be investigated. That is more than a cursory thing, like Clinton getting a back rub in a airport during a layover, which is creepy, but not illegal. So investigate them both. Investigate everybody. Investigate, whoever. Prince Andrew or just Raggedy Andy, as they call him now, or at least as I call him now. But anyway, you get my point, right? This whole thing is just to kick the can down the road. It's to create the facade that he's cooperating without actually cooperating. So now I want to talk about this moral ambiguity of Epsteining, is what I'm calling it. And that's this, all of a sudden, is it really wrong to rape children? Is 15-year-olds really, if you're 15, are you really a child? I saw tweets, oh, this wouldn't be a story if it were in Georgia instead of Florida. I'm sorry, 14 and 15 are still below the age of consent in Florida and Georgia. He agreed to release the Epstein files, and they have already been sanitized. There are no more Trump details in the files. It has been, I don't know, I don't think he has agreed to release them. I think he's agreed to allow, to go along with the vote. But why would you go along with the vote when you can just order the files released? The files haven't been released, but I do agree that they've probably gone through those files and thoroughly identified everything about him, which is why I think that they're doing everything they can to not release them. So, it is moral bankruptcy. When you start equivocating over whether 15 is old enough or 14 is old enough to be trafficked on a private airplane, you've got some real issues with you. And this is the crowd that has been going on and on and on about, having women's spaces invaded. because trans people might pee in the stall next to them. Like, that is like an unbreachable line. Trans people existing. Did you know that there has never been a single trans woman convicted of assaulting women in a public restroom? Never. It's never happened. Did you know that nearly half of trans women are assaulted in public restrooms? The victims are being blamed and the criminals are being excused here. And so, but you know, they're trans people and they're peeing, and there is just no line to be drawn there. That is clearly immoral. Trans people should not be allowed to pee without being assaulted. That's their like, that is their moral stand on that. But when it comes to a 14-year-old getting raped, getting sex trafficked, then it's like, you know, well, you know, I mean, she's got boobs. If it bleeds, it breeds. Like, that's their mentality. There's grass on the infield, time to play softball. Like, they are very much like sitting there going, you know, trying to, well, technically it's not, you know, pedophilia if they're over 11 or whatever it is, you know. When you start talking about, you know, the moral gray areas around, you know, the gray areas around what constitutes a pedophile, you sound a lot like a pedophile. So yeah, on that issue they can find all the gray area in the world. But hey, if a person walks over a border, an imaginary line illegally, so that they can save their own children, then we've got issues. Like, how dare you walk across this imaginary line to save your child's life? Like, they're not even willing to consider the possibility that asylum is a real thing anymore, or that there are actual people that need refuge. In large part because of situations that we, as the US government, going back 100 years, have helped navigate and instill this destabilizing South America. Do you know it's like about once every 2 or 3 years for the last 100 years? It's been, I think, 41 times in the last 100 and some years that we've successfully overthrown governments in South America. And then we're like, oh, well, they should just like vote and have a democracy and stuff. Well, tell that to Guatemala. They voted, had a democracy, elected communists, and we overthrew that government. Now, that government that was, you know, replaced, or that country, is one of the reasons that we have an immigration issue, an illegal immigration issue, because we've created those asylees in their country. You've got Donald Trump now threatening another war if they don't change their president. He's got another person in South America, in Brazil, who was who acted illegally and is being prosecuted for it. Well, no, we can't have that because he was a Trump ally. You know, as long as they're an authoritarian despot, Trump loves them. Forget their laws, forget their right to self-determination. No, none of that is okay. Everything is agree with Trump or not agree with Trump. And then you have the audacity to talk about how Democrats don't have moral standing to say anything. They don't have moral standing to do anything. You know what? Yeah, I think that people should be able to change their children's lives. I think trans people should be able to exist as trans people. And I don't think that people should rape children. I don't have any moral problem with saying any of those statements. And if you do, then you can get off your high horse. If you're okay with people raping children, then you are not a moral person and you have no ground to stand on anything. I don't know how much more clear I can be than that. I am so tired of Republicans acting like they're the moral authority on everything, because Democrats like agree that gay people should be able to marry who they love, or that trans people should be able to pee without being physically assaulted. Danica Trump. Yeah, and now he's suing BBC for like editing a video of him saying things that he actually said and implying that he actually wanted people to go on January 6th and attack the Capitol building, even though he sat around and watched people attack the Capitol building for 3 hours while he didn't do a damn thing about it. But yeah, somehow BBC's at fault. BBC is misleading people and trying to change the vote by not even showing the show in America. It's so, I cannot even fathom how Republicans can look at the mirror and say, yes, I'm a good person. All right. So now I want to talk about the main thing I want to talk about today, which is this whole moral, or the whole narco terrorism thing. All right. So I'm gonna have to put on my reading glasses here. And I'm going to be on a different screen, so if I don't see your comment, it's not that I am ignoring you. It's just that I haven't seen your comment. I'll try and remember to come back every once in a while. So the basic thing is this: Donald Trump is like literally murdering people in the Caribbean Sea under the pretext that they're terrorists and they're trafficking drugs. And that these drugs are being trafficked to America. And so they are narco-terrorists, a term which he made up, or that Marco Rubio made up, or somebody made up. It's not a real thing. And I'll go into that in a minute. But this justifies killing the people that are on these boats. And, you know, I posted about this on Twitter, that he's doing this while he's actually pardoning actual convicted cartel leaders and drug dealers. And it's like, to me, the incongruity is astounding. It's like, okay, you're so against drug trafficking and drug dealing that you're willing to just like kill people under suspicion without any kind of judicial process at all. But somehow people that have actually gone through that judicial process and be convicted should be let free. How do you wrap those two things around the same MAGA brain? Is the hat, is there something in the hat? Is there some kind of dye in the hat that just causes brains to die? I have no idea. But I'm going to go through, I created this little dashboard. Deconstructing narco-terrorism rhetoric. I came up with 12 logical fallacies, which I'll talk to you about each one of these. And the reason I thought this was a good idea for a show isn't just because of this one thing. It's because this is how MAGA thinks. This pries open the MAGA brain, and this is how they address everything. And it's with these things that I call fallacy bombs, where there's so many lies and fallacies that if you even address one, then you leave the other 11 sitting there. And so then they act like those things are justified. They can, say something outlandish, and unless you prove it's wrong, it means it's right. Like there was, I can't remember the name. This guy, he's about 21, maybe. He's an influencer type. and he's got a TikTok channel, and he was talking about the whole Epstein thing, and he had this guy call in and ask him, well, what's wrong with raping children? And he was just like in disbelief. The guy that ran the channel is in disbelief. He's like, I can't believe we're actually at this point. We were actually here. And the guy's like, oh, you can't answer the question. You can't answer the question. You can't answer the question. As though the question needs to be answered. So then he points this out on his Twitter channel or in his Twitter account. And then you have all these people coming up saying, first of all, oh, this didn't happen. It's a lie. Let's post the video. So he posts the video. And then they're like, oh, this was staged. And then there was a whole bunch of people. Oh, why don't you answer the question? As though answering loaded questions is going to solve the problem. If you need to have the question, what is wrong with raping children, answered, then you are a seriously defunct human being. You know what's wrong with raping children? You're raping them and their children. That's all the answer you need. So anyway, I'm going to go through the logic of all of these things, and this is, I've come up with 12 fallacies. There could be more. I'm not saying this list is exhaustive. Just from this one idea that the Trump administration framing of drug interdiction as a counter narco-terrorism, like just that one little argument has 12 different fallacies. It has more fallacies than it does words. Stacks multiple logical fallacies to justify extrajudicial killing, bypass international law, and avoid evidence-based discussions. This dashboard unpacks each fallacy. I'll post this dashboard in both and all my in all the places where the video is. But first, let's go into the tautology of it. Okay. For those who don't know what a tautology is, a tautology is when you, let me change my banner here. Okay, so the fallacy bomb. Okay, so a tautology is when you define a thing by itself. So if you say enough is enough, how much is enough? Enough is enough. That's what have you said about enough other than it's enough? You haven't said anything. You haven't defined what enough is. Is enough 3 cups? Is enough 5 gallons? Like, what is enough? There's nothing quantifiable to enough other than it's enough. So that's what a tautology is. It's when you define a thing by itself. So this is a kind of tautology by saying that they're narco-terrorists, therefore we can take military action against narco-terrorists. But narco-terrorists is a thing they made up. There's no such thing as a narco-terrorist outside of their saying there's a narco-terrorist. And this is like not a, this isn't just about logical technicalities or whatever. Terrorism and narcotics are 2 entirely different things. Terrorism is when you're committing violence and planning violent acts in order to make a political change. Narcotics is just about trying to make money. It's running illegal drugs. That's all it is. And it's just 100% about money. It's not at all about politics. Terrorism is all about politics. It's not about money. These 2 things are just not related in any way. But when you just make up the term narco-terrorism, then you're saying they're narco-terrorists, that's going to kill them. That's why we can kill them. You're just saying, I can kill them because I said I can kill them. And so it's a tautological defense of killing people. It's like, why are you killing them? Well, because I said I could. Why did you say you could? Because they're narco-terrorists. Why are they narco-terrorists? Because we said they were. What's a narco-terrorist? It's a thing we made up. There's nothing substantive there. It's just made up nonsense. And it's a tautological fallacy. Okay? What would there in the real world, there's actually running narcotics is against the law. It's already against the law. You don't need to declare it narco-terrorism. And you don't need to go and start bombing boats. Did you know 30 to 40% of boats that they suspect of carrying drugs when they pull them over, when the Coast Guard pulls them over and searches them, are not actually carrying drugs? Did you know that? I didn't know that until all of this started happening. But that's why this matters. That's why we need to actually have a legal process in which targets are identified through evidence gathering, judicial review, and meeting specific legal criteria. Not just, we said you're a narco-terrorist, therefore we can blow you up. By conflating drug trafficking, so these fallacies don't just make bad arguments, they create a rhetorical environment where legal constraints are bypassed. By conflating drug trafficking with terrorism, the administration accesses military authorities without judicial oversight. That's a real problem. Like, to just be able to tell the military, go blow people up, that's a problem. And yes, there are issues where Obama, for instance, used drones to kill terrorists, but that wasn't without a process. This is bypassing that entire process. And those were actual terrorists, like the American guy that he killed that the Republicans never got over. That guy was actually a terrorist. It also creates a false dichotomy, which I'll get into later. And then once narco-terrorism justifies Caribbean operations, the same logic can expand to any drug transit region. Or, as is the case, apparently, now we're going to start a land war. We're like, how long until we start invading countries based on the pretext of narco-terrorism? All while bypassing Congress. So that's the first one, is that it's a tautology. What is narco-terrorism? It's a thing they made up. And the only way that they can explain narco-terrorism is by saying it's what we said they are. Okay, so the next thing is an unjustified premise. They're narco-terrorists so we can bomb them. An unjustified premise is when you assume a label automatically justifies the thing. Like, the premise leads to the conclusion, but you didn't have to prove your premise. Right? That's a logical fallacy. Your premise has to actually be true for your logic to carry out. It's like if then, right? If the if isn't valid, then the then doesn't matter, because the then relies on the if being true. So if they're narco-terrorists, we can bomb them, right? But you haven't proven they're narco-terrorists. You haven't even proven that this thing called narco-terrorists actually exists. So your then we can bomb them is not true. So it's an unjustified premise. Even if someone is engaged in drug trafficking. Furthermore, even if someone is engaged in drug trafficking, this doesn't bypass international law, due process, or rules of engagement. The label skips over, are they armed combatants? Is there an imminent threat? What about sovereignty of territorial waters? So the whole notion, okay, they're narco-terrorists, therefore we can kill them. Well, you haven't proven they're narco-terrorists, but you also can't kill them just because you said they're narco terrorists. There's still laws that have to be followed. And it's amazing that people that talk about Trump as the law and order president constantly defend him breaking the law. And I'm not just talking about stealing classified documents. I mean, as president, he constantly breaks the law. He's violating international law by doing this. And you can say, but they're terrorists. Again, unjustified premise. If they, and even then, when did smuggling drugs become a capital offense that's on the spot without a judicial trial or any process? So international laws require proportionality, necessity, and a distinction between combatants and civilians. Maritime interaction has established legal protocols that don't include summary execution. Like, why can't you? Okay, you know they're drug traffickers? Then pull over the boat. Board the boat. Get the traffics. Arrest the people. We've got Coast Guard to do that kind of stuff. Well, and this is all also presupposing that they're coming to America, which is another thing. But it doesn't just give us license to blow fishing boats up willy-nilly. Okay. Straw man, unfounded supposition. Okay, so a straw man creates a simplified threat narrative or a simplified argument without evidence or intent or capability. And it's called a straw man because it's kind of like a straw man. It's an argument that you create that's easier to defeat. It's a man, but it's a straw man. Anybody can kill a straw man, right? It's not like killing a real man or attacking a real person. So the real argument, the genuine argument is avoided by erecting this straw man. Okay, so here the straw man is that these boats are coming here to flood America with deadly drugs. And why it's problematic? This assumes that one, every boat is heading to the U.S., which it's not. Two, the specific individuals on board are responsible for American overdoses, which that's not necessarily the case. And three, this particular interdiction will prevent deaths. And four, there are no intermediaries or complex supply chains. So, if all of the drug deaths were just coming from these fishing boats, then you might, have some case, but you don't even have that. And I mean, you wouldn't have a case, but you would have more of a case. Sorry, just saw there were a bunch of comments. I think the host doesn't understand the extent to which Congress has delegated authority to the executive branch. I do understand that, but the Congress has not extended this authority to anybody ever. I mean, I know about the War Powers Act and things like that, but no, the Congress has not just said you can go around murdering people on the high seas with no justification. Okay. Why are you see, this is what I mean. This is the straw man. Why are you defending drugs being brought into the United States? I'm not. We'll get into that one later, though. That's called a false dichotomy. So anyway, the law says I think they mean if the law says the executive can designate terrorists. That, I mean, yeah. So yeah, she said they clarify in the law. So, but I don't want to get into all there's issues, but I think that there are things that Congress have done. Just to answer your question, Congress has passed laws that were never nobody ever thought that somebody would strain them so deliberately and so grotesquely. Like, we need to have the president be able to respond to terrorism, right? But we didn't think that when they passed that law, they weren't thinking, oh, gee, the president can just go around calling anybody he wants to a terrorist and then kill them because he said they were a terrorist. Like, there was a kind of a good faith notion in these laws that were inherent in these laws that the president would be acting in good faith. We didn't have an idea that we'd have a president that would just so wholeheartedly act in bad faith. So I see your point, and I'm not saying it's totally invalid. I'm just saying Congress didn't intend to give him the power to just kill people by labeling him a terrorist. All right. So then narco-terrorism was not just made up. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, narco-terrorism does not exist. I don't care if it's in the Oxford Dictionary. I mean, there's no such thing as narco-terrorism. So okay, yeah, now we're up to the false dichotomy. So either we will kill them now or they'll kill Americans with drugs. So that's what this guy is saying, right? Why are you defending drugs being brought into the States? You're creating a false dichotomy that either one thing must be true or the other thing must be true. If we don't blow up these ships, then we are allowing drugs to come into the United States. Both sides of that assumption are wrong. Like, first of all, drugs can come into the United States if we blow up those ships. Secondly, blowing up those ships does not, or not saying we should blow up those ships does not mean even if there are drugs on that boat that I am supporting drugs being brought into the United States. I support the Coast Guard boarding the ship and arresting the people on the boat and impounding the drugs. That allows for the boats not to be blown up and the boats to be and the drugs to be confiscated, right? So I'm not okay with that if there are drugs on that boat that are bound for the United States. What you're excluding is the possibility that there aren't drugs on that boat, that they aren't coming to the United States, that there aren't other ways that drugs can come into the United States. Now, the big issue that Trump wants to promote is fentanyl. There's no fentanyl on those boats. Fentanyl is not coming over on speedboats, and it's not coming over from immigrants. Almost all the fentanyl that's coming over the southern border is through American citizens, and it's by land. So it has nothing to do with these speedboats. This is a false dichotomy. So, that covers false dichotomy. So appeal to fear. Fentanyl is killing 100,000 Americans a year. We must act now. I mean, first of all, that number is not even accurate. It's really more like 50,000 a year. And it's not even per year. Secondly, I think it was last year there were like 86,000 people that died of overdose, but not all of those people died of fentanyl overdoses. Secondly, there's more than one way to, address the fentanyl issues. Like, it's not just blowing up the boats or not blowing up the boats. But it makes you oh, no. If we don't do this, then we're going to, have all these fentanyl deaths. And it makes the consequences of your made up scenario so egregious that it justifies anything that we do. Okay, I heard that a Trump defender say that we have been engaged in military efforts in Venezuela against drug. No, we haven't been. I mean, it's not the case. Okay, if it doesn't, no, it's literally a thing that Marco Rubio made up. If it's in the Oxford Dictionary, it's because Marco Rubio made it up. It's not a historic thing, and the thing itself doesn't exist. drug traffickers and drug cartels are not politically motivated. That's just a fact. It's not about what my prerogative is, which I don't think you know what prerogative means. So, yeah, it's in the ninth. Sure, buddy. All right. If it's in the 1999 dictionary, it's not being used in the way that Marco Rubio is using it. Cartels are not politically motivated, period, end of story. The cartels are not terrorist organizations. It's just dumb. And anyway, so just put you in a timeout. Okay, so just appealing to fear is like you make it like, if you don't do this, this really, really bad thing is going to happen. And if this really, really bad thing happens, it's your fault because you didn't do anything. Okay. All right. So we're done with envy is gone. So now we're going to the next one, which is misleading framing. Every boat we stop saves American lives directly. And it's like, they're not even really just stopping them. It's like every boat we blow up is saving American lives. And it's not saving American lives. You don't even know that there's drugs on them. There are ways to stop them without blowing them up. It's well, oh wait, so this is called, yeah. So you're framing the argument in a way where it's like, you either stop the boats or you're like, let Americans die. This vastly overstates cause and effect. Drug markets are adaptive. Supplies are routed other ways. Prices adjust. Demand doesn't disappear. The claim of direct life saving creates a false sense of efficacy and urgency. And that's like, if you stop these boats, if you blow up these boats and you keep blowing up boats, do you think the drug cartels are just going to say, whoops, that's it? You don't think that they're going to find another way to get drugs over here? It's amazing. Like, if you look at like gun control and you say, like, we need to do something about gun control, then they'll say, the criminals are just going to find a way. But when it comes to extrajudicial killings of fishermen in the Caribbean, then it's like, if we blow them up, then there's no way the drugs could ever get over here. What if they were gun runners? If they were gun runners, do you think you'd be able to find a way? Or is it only guns that people can find a way for? Why is it that you can find a way to get around laws if you're a gun runner, but you can't get around laws if you're a drug trafficker? Where's the logic in that? Okay. Real world context, drug interaction studies show temporary market disruptions at best. The U.S. has spent millions on supply side interventions with minimal impact on availability or price. So we're spending all of this money on stopping the drug traffic. Like, every one of those boats we blow up, I should have looked this up and didn't think about it until just now. But how much does a drone strike cost? About $150,000 for the missile, and then $19,000 an hour for the drone. So every time we're blowing up one of these boats, we're spending like hundreds of $1,000s to blow up a fishing boat. So so we've got this person saying, okay, but wasn't the alternative 4 more years of white supremacy is the greatest threat to the homeland? Well, yes. I mean, that was an actual argument that's made and has been vindicated. Like, you've literally got a guy quoting Hitler, blowing up brown people, interning American citizens because they're brown, arresting them because they spoke Spanish. So yeah, I kind of think that's a real thing. It's not a false dichotomy, and it wasn't the only thing. You're creating a straw man argument of a false dichotomy. So your entire, like, this is what I mean. This is what I mean when I say these are like fallacies that MAGA uses and compounds. Like, they cannot just say, you know what? Trump shouldn't be blowing up people on the high seas. They're like, oh, but Kamala Harris criticized Trump for being a white supremacist. As though only one of those things can be true. Okay. So the next one is, we'll save Gish Gallop for last. Hasty generalization. All boats in this region are narco-terrorist vessels. So that's not exactly what they're saying. They're saying all the speedboats in that region are narco-terrorist vessels. Like, oh, well, they can't be fishing boats. And then this is what a fishing boat looks like, and this is what a speedboat looks like. Except that you don't have 12 people on a smuggling boat, because you want to keep the boat as lightly with as few people on it, because that weight means that's weight that you can't put drugs on. So there's all kinds of reasons, actual reasons, to believe that not all fishing boats, look like a 1930s fishing boat. People use speedboats to fish, yes. But it's kind of irrelevant as to whether or not they are, because you're just kind of lumping them all together, lumps together legitimate fishing vessels, cargo ships, migrants, and actual drug traffickers. It creates a shoot first policy that rates all hostile targets without individual assessment. So like this, like just saying it's not a fishing boat, it's a speedboat, is false framing. And it's a hasty generalization. I'm sorry. The Caribbean is heavily trafficked by commercial and civilian vessels. Military rules of engagement still apply and require positive identification of hostile intent. So even if they're like drug traffickers, their intent is not hostile. It's to unload their drugs. It's illegal, and they should be arrested. They should be stopped. We have the means to do that. We don't have to kill them. But we should stop them, because, as I said, 30 to 40% of the times we stop and board ships that we think have drugs, we end up being wrong. And yeah, 60-70% of the time we're right. But that means 30 to 40% of the boats we're blowing up, nobody was guilty. We just killed those people. And the ones that were guilty didn't commit a capital offense. There's actually laws in place for a reason. You can't just decide something is a capital offense and start murdering people around the world. All right, so equivocation. Using narco-terrorists to conflate drug crimes with acts of war. Right? This is, goes into the whole what's his name was complaining about, NV. Terrorism has a specific meaning: violence against civilians for political aims. Drug trafficking is a crime, but it's not terrorism. There is a difference between terrorism and drug trafficking, and both are illegal, and both are wrong, and both are bad. In both cases, people should be punished. But Drug traffickers are not coming over here to try and kill Americans. They're coming over here to try and sell drugs. Or they're not even trying to sell the drugs. They're trying to give the drugs to the people that are going to sell them. By merging the terms, the rhetoric borrows the post 9/11 military authorization while avoiding the legal constraints of law enforcement. This is just a way to get around the law. The idea that these are terrorists is just not true. They aren't terrorists. Okay. So then the next one, slippery slope. If we don't stop them now, cartels will control our countries, right? Like, oh, if we don't do this, then this terrible, terrible, terrible things will happen. No, they won't. We know they won't happen because they haven't been happening. And there's other ways to, combat drug trafficking. This is not the only way. Extrapolates from some traffic. So yeah, I'll give you an example of this. I once had a guy argue with me that if we allow gay marriage, then eventually everybody will be gay and we won't be able to repopulate as a planet because people will only have gay sex. Like this is a perfect example of a slippery slope. And yeah, that really happened. It's not like if we don't blow these ships up, it's creating drug addicts. You can actually like try and combat drug trafficking or drug addiction other ways, right? There's a way to combat drug overdoses in other ways. Not everything has to be about kill. It's amazing how much the pro-life party embraces killing. As long as you're born, you can be killed. And cartels are a law enforcement challenge, not an existential threat to U.S. sovereignty. This rhetoric inflates the problem to justify military solutions to what is fundamentally a public health and criminal justice issue. And this gets back to the false dichotomy thing. It's you see how it's all wrapped up together. And this is what I mean by like a fallacy bomb. And you got people jumping in here and trying to say, oh, well, what about this? What about that? And it's like they just pivot from one fallacy to the next. These fallacies don't just make bad arguments. They create a rhetorical environment where legal constraints are bypassed. By conflating drug trafficking with terrorism, the administration accesses military authorities without judicial oversight. And judicial oversight is important. We need to have judicial oversight. All right. Then, appeal to patriotism. Real Americans support protecting our country from drug dealers. Okay, what am I then? A fake American? Like, what do you mean by real Americans? Like, oh, if you don't support like murdering people on the high seas, you're not a real American? Actually, real Americans support following the law. Real Americans support constitutional rights. Real Americans support America being not one of the villains of the world, but being a leader in the world. And being a leader in the world means we don't violate international laws and murder people on the high seas. Patriotism can mean upholding constitutional principles, international law, and effective policy. Wrapping bad policy in the flag doesn't make it good policy. It just makes criticism harder. And this is like, everything is to avoid actually having the discussion. Like, do you know that what is the actual legal basis for Donald Trump to execute these people? There is none. And then if you get to that point, then you have to like say Donald Trump did something wrong, which is something most Republicans seem, for whatever reason, to be completely incapable of doing. Okay? Then there's the red herring, which is like when you know, like if you don't know what a red herring is, the idea of a red herring is they would smoke back in the olden days. They would smoke a herring, a fish, and it would give off a really strong smell, and it would turn red when you smoked it, and then it was called a red herring. And when they were training hunting dogs, they would take the herring and they would try and make a path with the herring to distract the dog from going after the actual thing. So it's like hunting a fox, right? And then it would catch the red herring and it had this really strong scent, and it would be like, ooh, that smells really good. And so I'd go chasing after this red herring and get distracted from the fox. That's what a red herring argument is it's some kind of argument that tries to distract you from the actual argument. And so the actual argument isn't about whether or not we should be bombing ships in the Red Sea or in the Caribbean. The actual argument we should be having is how can we address drug smuggling into the United States? How can we actually address the overdose problems in the United States? How can we address drug addiction in the United States? These are the conversations we need to have. Bombing ships in the Caribbean might feel great, but it has negligible impact on actual drug trafficking. It has zero impact on fentanyl smuggling. It has zero impact on drug overdoses. All those boats combined probably did not prevent one single drug overdose. What's it called? Naloxone. Joe Biden actually brought down the number of drug overdoses by getting naloxone out into communities, and he brought it down like over a couple of years from like 120,000 to like 80,000. That's called addressing the actual problem. Donald Trump now has, with his big beautiful bill act, cut the funding that was giving people the naloxone, even though he's like signing these, executive orders about stuff that don't do anything. He's basically, his entire drug plan is, like bomb people on the high seas, put tariffs on the rest of the world, and say, and just say no 2.0. He has no actual real substantive plan to address actual drug overdoses in the United States. And that's the conversation we need to be having. What can we do to address drug overdoses? Yes, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about tens of thousands of Americans dying because of drug overdoses. That's why I think we should talk about that. Instead, we're talking about blowing people up on the high seas. How about the fact that all right, obviously you just joined and missed the entire thing that I've just been talking about. But yes, if they're bringing drugs into this country, they should be arrested. We don't know that they're bringing drugs into this country, other than Trump said so. And Trump has been known to lie. Okay. So then, where did we go? Want to go back to here. This is, Gish Gallop is a kind of fallacy where you have so many fallacies that you can't even like rebut them one at a time, addressing one fallacy unchallenged, and the sheer number creates the impression of a solid case. So it's like there's all of these fallacies, and then it's like, oh well, you didn't address this. Let me put it this simply. Drug trafficking is a problem in the United States. Drug use is a problem in the United States. Bombing people on the open seas does nothing to solve those problems. Bombing people on the high seas extrajudicially is both a national and international crime. All right? So we can have both discussions. I can believe that we should stop drug smuggling without having to say that we need to murder people. I'm allowing for nuance. What your entire debate is that the only way to stop drug trafficking is to bomb these boats that aren't even trafficking drugs. So, and now here's the other part of this argument that really gets me annoyed. Is this notion that Donald Trump is doing all of this because he really cares about the drug trafficking problem. But meanwhile, while he's doing this, while he's bombing people in the Caribbean for trafficking drugs, he is pardoning drug traffickers. And it's like, I posted about this on Twitter and people were like, name them. Well, okay, I will. I'll at least name some. There are a total of 20, there's over 20 drug traffickers, 21 drug traffickers that he has pardoned or commuted their sentence or ended their investigations. And some of these were really, really bad people. All right. So he pardoned 13 in his first term, and he's pardoned 8 so far in his second term, and he's just getting going. 2 of those were major kingpins. All right. One of those was a guy named Ross Ulbricht. He was pardoned on day 2 of the second term after promising libertarian supporters. Trump claimed prosecutors were lunatics when, involved in weaponization of government. He created a Silk Road dark web marketplace. He facilitated $200 million in illegal drug sales, including heroin, cocaine, LSD, and meth. His original sentence was life in prison plus 40 years, and he got a full pardon. One of the first things Trump did. He did it on January 21st, 2025. There were at least 6 people who OD'd and died directly as a result of drugs bought on his website, right? This is the thing, ostensibly, that Donald Trump is so against, that he's willing to go out and murder people on the high seas. But if it's a rich libertarian that his MAGA base thinks, got railroaded somehow, even though he went through the legal system and was convicted of an actual crime that actually resulted in people dying, he's okay with that. He's okay with all of that happening, because that doesn't give him headlines as being like tough on crime. Okay. What about Larry Hoover? Larry Hoover was serving a 200-year state sentence for 1973 murder. He operated criminal enterprise from prison, federal sentence commuted, but remains in prison because he also, because Trump can't pardon him for state crimes, only federal crimes. This guy founded Gangster Disciples. He ran a $100 million a year operation in Chicago and 35 states. He was convicted of murder, drug trafficking, and racketeering. He has multiple life sentences plus a 200-year state sentence. But Donald Trump commuted his federal sentence. Why? because Kanye West asked him to. So if he's so against drug trafficking and murder and all these horrible things, why is he pardoning Larry Hoover? How about Alice Marie Johnson? She was a first-time offender. She served 21 years. But now Trump's pardon czar recommends others for clemency. She was convicted of cocaine trafficking, an intermediary in Memphis drug ring dealing 2,000 to 3,000 kilograms of cocaine per year. She had a life sentence plus 25 years. She got a commutation and a full pardon. Why? Because Kim Kardashian asked him to. This one's my favorite. I don't know how to say his name, so I'm probably General Salvador Cienfuegos Zapata. I don't know. I don't speak Spanish. Sorry if I butchered that. But this guy was actually like the Secretary of Defense or something for Mexico, and he was helping the drug cartels smuggle, like literally smuggle. This guy helped cartels smuggle cocaine into the U.S. This is exactly what he is ostensibly trying to prevent. It was Mexican Defense Secretary, helped the drug cartels. He was arrested by the DEA, and then there were charges pending. This was in Trump's first term, and Trump dropped those charges, sent him back because he was afraid that the Mexican government wouldn't let the DEA operate in Mexico anymore. So much for peace, truth, strength, right? This guy, he gave an award to something, the Merit of Honor or something like that, for helping combat drugs. Like, I cannot make this stuff up. This guy literally helped cartels smuggle drugs into the United States. The DEA arrested him for it. Donald Trump said let him go, and Donald Trump gave him a medal for helping to fight the drug cartels smuggling drugs into the United States. He's still on the payroll in Mexico. Okay? So that's only just a sampling of the people that Donald Trump pardoned for smuggling drugs into the United States, for selling drugs in the United States. These are people that actually went through the process, went through the real judicial process, and were convicted by juries or pleaded guilty or whatever. I don't know the details of how they were all convicted, but these were all people actually in prison or who actually were guilty. These were not people that were just on boats. So this is why I say it's like a fallacy bomb. Every single argument, I'm so sick of it. Every single argument that Republicans and MAGAs make in defending Trump is just doubling down on one fallacy, one bad argument after another. And it's really this simple. Donald Trump is illegally killing people in the Caribbean without evidence. And even if there is evidence, the evidence is not of a capital offense. And even if there is evidence of a capital offense, Donald Trump does not have the legal right to decide that they are guilty of a capital offense. Making up this narco-terrorism thing does not make it okay. I don't know how much more clear I can be about that. Donald Trump is murdering people. He is. You can try and justify that any which way you can, but it is not justifiable. He's a murderer, and you support a murderer if you support Donald Trump. How many lows would a? Oh, that's because I said high seas. Okay, I think the video of that is hysterical. By the way, Rob Lowe seems like a guy that he'd be fun to hang out with. I like celebrities that like can make fun of themselves. Um, but anyway, I'm distracted. So that's today's show. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Um, the I can't with these guys anymore. Like from trying to qualify that it's okay to rape children to it's okay to murder people on the high seas. Like where is your, like, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna make a moral, you're gonna draw a moral line around a transgender person peeing after you're defending child rape, after you're defending murder. You know, like somebody peeing in a stall next to you, that's where you draw the line. So Fanita asks if I'm still smoking pot. Um, no, I'm not. Um, so, um, yeah, that's it. Like you can sit there and just like nobody's like, you notice nobody's actually addressing the logic here. They're trying to talk around it. You know, like no, there's no such thing as narco-terrorism. You can talk about it was in the Oxford Dictionary from 1999, but that's not what it was. What it is not part of the legal code in the United States. They find these ways to, and even if it were a real thing, there's still a whole process you have to go through. It's like they try so hard to, they create a fake argument and then they cling to that fake argument for their very life, because otherwise they have to admit Donald Trump is wrong about something. And if they're wrong about him killing people, if they're wrong about him arresting people that are citizens, then they have to admit they might have been wrong about why they're voting. Like this guy. Oh, the alternative, 4 more years of white supremacy is the greatest threat to the homeland, which is not an exact quote. But yeah, Donald Trump is a white supremacist. And he's been proving it with all his anti-DEI stuff. You know, like somehow if you're a black person that got a job, you got it over a white person. How is that not white supremacy? Like, I am so tired of people like pretending like he's not a white supremacist. Yes, he is. Stop with that. The only people he believes deserve asylum are white farmers from South Africa who aren't even being persecuted. Yes, he's a white supremacist. He talks about, the immigrants being poisoned to the blood of America. Like, that's literally a quote from Hitler. You don't quote Hitler and then deny you're a white supremacist. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Donald Trump is a white supremacist. Deal with it. And if people saying that is why we lost, then that means America is lost. I'm not going to back down from saying he's a white supremacist. He is one. He's a fascist. Why do I have to stop saying he's a fascist just because he's a fascist? You guys have been calling me a communist for 40 years. You've been accusing me of being Stalin for 40 years. But I point out that he quotes Hitler and all of a sudden the hyperbole is there? No, if he quotes Hitler, he quotes Hitler. If he acts fascist, he's a fascist. I'm sorry if it hurts your little feelings. So anyway, that's it. That's all for today's Pun Show. Thanks for dropping in. Thanks for weighing in. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.